Hey everybody, how's it going? SaltyOctopus here, and I have some Tribes 3 Rivals stuff I really want to talk about, and quite frankly, some stuff I need to get off my chest. So buckle up, as this video might be a little bit of a rant as it's not scripted. However, I do have a few pointed things that I have thought about that I do want to talk about, so let's just jump right into this. First off, as I've said a few times on this channel, I'm new to Tribes. I'm new to Tribes 3 Rivals. However, at the time of making this video, I do have almost 50 hours in the various playtests, and I'm starting to kind of get my feet under me, if you will. I'm also very active in the community Discord, providing my own feedback as well as reading and reacting and talking through all the other various feedback posts as well. And I've been excited for this game. I'm feeling good about this game, but today something happened in the Discord that's left me feeling a little bit uneasy, to say the least. On February 3rd, Saturday morning, Erez, the CEO of Hi-Rez and Prophecy Games, put a poll up in the Discord which said the following: which direction would you prefer? Option 1, split Honor Ball and Tribes into two separate games, with Honor Ball designed around small group play and Tribes around larger group play, 7v7 to 20v20, in parentheses, and more towards the T1, T2 directions with bases, loadouts, deployables, etc. Option 2, keep the current direction of Honor Ball in smaller scale CTF, in parentheses, max 12v12. And at the time of this recording, the two options are basically split down the middle, with option 1 voting currently having 108 and option 2 voting currently having 104, which is what I voted for. So I want to dive into this. I want to talk about this poll. I want to talk about the message it sends the community. I want to talk about each option, and I also want to talk about a possible option 3 that maybe Erez is not considering here. And there's also a lot of speculation that's going around in Discord, and I'm going to do my absolute best to not speculate on anything that I don't know what I'm talking about. I am simply going to just give my best unbiased opinion for what I believe is the best direction that Tribes can go from this moment forward. But before I get too far ahead of myself here, let's talk about Honor Ball and what exactly Honor Ball is. So a couple of playtest patches ago, a new game mode was released where basically bombs would spawn all over the map. Players would collect those bombs, take them to the enemy base, and then blow up the enemy base with those bombs. The bombing site was basically just a giant tube that players would try to aim for and go down, and then that would essentially explode the base. The team with the most base bombings would win the game. Simple as that. It was a fun game mode, and immediately I started to think of Rocket League when I was playing this game mode. Over the next couple of patches, the game mode was refined down into a much more simplistic experience with a much smaller map called the Honor Dome, and only one bomb was then spawned in the middle, and players would then fight over for that bomb to then deliver it to the enemy base. So for lack of a better comparison, basically this was Tribes Rocket League, which is what I originally kind of felt this game mode reminded me of when I first played it all those playtests ago. And now this weekend, a patch is released with more maps for this game mode, a ball instead of a bomb, announcer sounds, you know, a much more polished and refined experience. And I do know that it is popular. I do know that it is played. A lot of Tribes veterans are really excited about this mode. They want to play this mode, and a lot of people are talking about even getting a tournament going, a 4v4 tournament going for this mode. So it definitely has appeal and it has some attraction. But can this game mode become its own game? Well, that's the question, and that's why I'm making this video. The short answer to that question is I think that it is far too early to tell, which leads me to the first point that I made in the opening of this video. I want to talk about what this poll says, kind of reading between the lines here, to the community, in my opinion. Again, remember, all of this is my opinion. I haven't talked to anybody else about this stuff. It kind of says to me that Prophecy / Hi-Rez is really scrambling a little bit to figure out the identity of this game and what Tribes 3 is going to be. They are taking an old school concept and they are trying to adapt it and modernize it for a current gaming market. And it would seem to me that they're being a little bit reactionary to the trends of their alpha testing, and they're kind of making these snap judgments or decisions based upon feedback that quite frankly is not from a very deep pool of players. You know, for example, the image that I showed you of the poll, that has been up for about, at the time of recording this, about 6 or 7 hours, and it only has a little over 200 votes. And they're talking about splitting something into two separate games. That is a very, very large concept, and it's something that will change the entire direction not only of Tribes 3 Rivals, but the entire franchise. That's not a small question to ask, and I call it reactionary because it does feel that way. Honor Ball is a new concept for Tribes 3, and it's only been in the game for a couple of patches here. I don't have the data in front of me, so I have nothing to speak on to that, but it does seem like it is popular. However, compared to Capture the Flag, I don't know if it's more popular or less popular. But is it popular enough to spin it off into its own game? That is the million-dollar question, and that is also something that I personally struggle seeing. Now, backing up a little bit, if you did not know this already, the video's on my channel. I had a chance to speak with Mick Larkins of Prophecy Games, who is the head of gameplay programming, and one thing that we talked a lot about was the pillars of Tribes and what makes Tribes a Tribes game. Jetpacks, skiing, projectile-based weapons, all of that definitely are the pillars of Tribes, and it's what makes Tribes Tribes. And I do feel in Tribes 3 Rivals, they have successfully captured the Tribes feeling, the Tribes pillars in this game. There's no doubt about that. But I also think it's very important to also ask the question, what makes a Tribes game to the veteran community? And depending on what community that you speak to, that answer is going to be very different. However, universally, I would say that probably all the communities would agree that Capture the Flag is at the top of the list. Now, this development of Tribes 3 has been very interesting, as Prophecy Games has definitely been reading a lot of the feedback. In every single patch, there are oftentimes big changes to the mechanics of the game. You know, you'll have different weapons, you'll have different loadouts, you'll have different packs, you'll have different, in some cases, physics to the gravity or the mobility of players, to the way that jets work, etc., etc. And while all of this definitely changes the meta or the minute details of the game, one thing has always stayed consistent. There is still Capture the Flag being played in a Capture the Flag based game, because that is what Tribes is. Now, you're going to want some players who are going to want a more expansive experience from like Tribes 1 or Tribes 2, with bigger maps, vehicles, bigger bases, underground areas, inventory stations, etc., etc. And then there's others that are really enjoying the smaller 12v12, 7v7 type formats, myself included. And so what I think you have here is a clashing of the old school and the new school. It's like I said, they're trying to adapt this older game model to meet a current gaming market standards. And I think a lot of trending games today, you can kind of break them down into these smaller, more arena-like experiences that don't take more than 15-20 minutes to complete a round. The Finals is a great example of that. Even Escape from Tarkov has gone to an arena mode. And that is why I've always looked at Tribes 3 as kind of a watered-down version of Tribes 1 and Tribes 2. It is more of an arena, Capture the Flag experience. It has faster projectile speeds on its weapons. The maps are a lot smaller. There are no vehicles, and then of course the player numbers on the map are smaller as well. So yeah, basically the entire Tribes 1 and Tribes 2 experience has been compressed into Tribes 3 Rivals. And while I might be oversimplifying it, that is basically my impressions of what is kind of going on and the direction that the developers are taking this game. So when you compress it down into more of an arena format, then you do it one more time with this new game mode Honor Ball, you still have the pillars of what makes Tribes, which Mick does a great job explaining in the interview I did with him. But the identity of the game has now changed from this big, open, expansive experience like the first two games into a much tighter arena-like format. And so a lot of the older players, a lot of people who've been playing these games since 1998, Tribes to them is a lot more than just jetpacks and projectiles. The entire identity of the game has changed. And while I do think that Tribes does need to adapt for the modern gaming market, and while I do think that some of the stuff that has been done to push it towards that direction has been done really well, pushing it into two separate games is not the way to go about it, in my opinion. Firstly, more than anything else, the main concern is that you're going to split the community. Secondly, the attention and the focus is now going to be on two games instead of one, and that experience is going to be vastly different as well. And with a small team, you run the risk of dividing your attention so much that neither one gets the proper attention it so desperately needs to make a cohesive package. Next, if one game does very well and the other one starts to fail, attention will naturally divert to the one that's making money, leaving the other one behind. This not only will divide resources, but also the community even further, leaving a lot of fans dissatisfied and frustrated. And lastly, and quite frankly, in my opinion, most importantly, Honor Ball is still so fresh and so new. It has only been out for a couple of weeks, and naturally players are going to flock to what's new and fun. Give it time to settle, give us time to have a tournament or two with it, and then see where people's heads are at when the dust has settled. Now, at the start of this video, I mentioned a third option I wanted to talk about, and maybe this option has or has not been discussed internally, but I do think it's worth discussing, and I do hope the developers take this into consideration if they happen to listen to this video. Why not develop an overall capture the flag experience similar to Tribes 1 and Tribes 2? Do larger maps with inventory stations, vehicles, and a lot of the things that veterans have been requesting. Make this experience the central focus of the quick play. When players queue up for matches, they are going to go into a more overall larger Tribes experience. Then for your ranked and competitive queues, you can do the smaller scale, more arena style capture the flag like you have right now. You can keep this experience to 12s or 9s or 7s, whatever you deem appropriate, but this way all your bases is covered. You've appealed to the players who want a more Tribes 1 and Tribes 2 experience with the larger scale, more public queue, and then you're also appealing to the more arena based, smaller scale competitive players as well. Then you have the third option, which is the honor ball queue, which you're obviously very favorable of supporting considering you are thinking about a second game for this mode entirely, but doing this keeps the honor ball people excited as well, and it doesn't split your community off into multiple different video games. And finally, due to custom matches, players can play whatever they want to their heart's content. And if a 20 versus 20 competitive scene ever develops, they have the ability to do that because you've provided them with the custom lobbies. In my opinion, this makes everybody happy. There's a little bit of something there for everyone depending on how they want to play Tribes. You're appealing to those who want a traditional Tribes 1 and Tribes 2 experience, and then you have the competitive and honor ball groups happy as well. No matter which way you swing it, the community will be divided, but at least this way they're divided into separate queues, all in the same launcher instead of separate games spread across Steam. The cross-pollination of the player base is definitely a lot more guaranteed when they're all in the same package rather than being spread across multiple games where they might not ever interact with the other one. And lastly, I introduced a couple of new players to the game, some of my good friends who have never experienced a Tribes game before, similar to me, and these are guys that come from more modern shooters like Call of Duty and Battlefield, but they picked it up and we're having a great time right out of the gates, with one of my friends even saying like, I could see myself trying to get good at this game. And also, as a relatively new player myself, I do feel like this latest playtest was the most balanced, that the projectiles have been, that the speed has been, that the air control has been. So I do think whatever Prophecy Games is doing to tune the game for new players as well as still appeal to veterans, in my humble opinion, I do think it is working. So I wanted to make this video because I do feel hopeful about this formula, and I think sticking to what makes Tribes Tribes and sticking to this formula of trying to make it appeal to the modern gamer and the veteran player is way more important than trying to go out and capture lightning in the bottle the way that something like Rocket League did. Tribes still needs to stick to its own identity of what makes Tribes Tribes, rather than trying to emulate something, in their own way of course, something that is trending in the gaming marketplace. Tribes is an old enough game now where it has the ability to bring something fresh to the gaming market yet again. It is in a unique place where a lot of people are feeling burned out by the Call of Duty clones. They are feeling burned out by the Battle Royale clones. So I think Prophecy Games and Hi-Rez has a really great opportunity here to use Tribes as an innovator, but they need to do it by sticking to what made the game so special in the first place. And please keep the player base together. Don't split us across multiple games. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed my rant. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm SaltyOctopus, and I will see you next time. Happy fragging.